Hey, if you got your Bibles, turn with me to Genesis 18. Genesis 18, and I'm just going to share for just a few moments tonight. Genesis 18 and verse 13. Then the Lord said to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Will I really have a child now that I am old?'" I love this response. Is anything too hard for the Lord? That alone will preach. Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son. I find this text so interesting because God is speaking here to this couple, Abraham and Sarah. They're well advanced in age. The Bible actually says they're 100. And I don't know if you know where babies come from, but if you don't, ask an adult. But at 100, I feel like that might be difficult. Real talk. And God tells Sarah, hey, oldie, you're going to have a baby. 100 years not been able to have a child, and now all of a sudden she laughs, as anybody would, as you just did. I feel like that's a pretty logical response. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable response. When God shares something with you, and in your mind, not only is it illogical, improbable, there's no way you could reason how that could ever come to pass. And Sarah laughs. Appropriate response, I think we would all agree. But I love God's response to Sarah's response. Is anything too difficult for the Lord? Is there anything too difficult for the Lord? Because Sarah labels herself unfit. She labels herself unqualified. She labels herself counted out. She's defined by her logic, her reasoning. And even though God has told her this promise, this dream that she's had for many years is going to come to pass, she has deemed herself unworthy and concluded in her mind, this cannot happen. This is not in the cards for me. I'm not the right person for this This message clearly was meant for someone else. I look at this time I'm in my life, where I'm at in life, there's no way this is possible. And she does this, and you and I, whether we realize it or not, struggle with this same problem that Sarah has. Because we look at things in our life, and do we not make the same conclusions? We say, this is possible, this is not possible. We say, I'm capable of this, I'm not capable of that. My past experience has taught me I'm always going to struggle in this area. I'm always going to be addicted to nicotine. I'm never going to break free from this cycle of choosing wrong men because mom chose the wrong guy and her mom chose the wrong guy. So now it's just gonna be your lot in life. Man, my parents divorced and their parents divorced, so what hope do I have of ever breaking that curse on my life? And we make these defining conclusions about our life and put these labels on ourselves. But God's message to Sarah is the same message to you and I tonight. Is there anything too difficult for our Lord? You were made on purpose, and you were made for a great purpose. I want to bring some encouragement to you tonight. If you could title this message anything, I want to talk to you about how you were made for more. Many people, like Sarah, say, not me, not now, not here, but I want to help you understand this difference maker tonight. You are the right person that God is speaking to you. God's not giving that message to you, that encouragement, that dream to you by mistake. You are the right person to hear that message. The time is now for you to hear this message that He has for you, and you are absolutely in the right place to hear this message that God has for you. You are made for more. Years ago, Flight 900 took off just outside of Washington, D.C. and crashed into the 14th Street Bridge, plunging the plane and its passengers into the icy Potomac River. 92 passengers were on board. The plane is sinking into the water. The people are escaping into these waters, struggling to stay alive, struggling to stay afloat. They're fighting hypothermia. And suddenly a bystander who is on his way to work sees this tragedy, sees people drowning in the water. And without hesitation, he tears off his coat, tears off his shoes, and he jumps into the icy water and begins rescuing people. He swims over and he rescues a woman, brings her to shore. He goes back into the water. He rescues her daughter, pulls her to shore. He ends up going back out into the water 5 additional times and saving the lives of every one of these people. While this is going on, you can imagine rescue teams are working tirelessly and very quickly to rescue these people, and news stations and cameras are rolling, and it's being broadcast into every home in Washington, D.C. and across the nation. And there was a woman watching the news, and she's seeing what's happening, and she looks to her kids, and she's looking at this man that's in the water rescuing people. She looks at her kids, she says, that looks like something that your father would do. And 3 hours later, she would get a phone call from her husband because she found out that that actually was her husband rescuing people from the water. But why am I saying this story to you? I'm saying this and I'm asking you this question. When tragedy hits your life, when crisis hits your life, what do people say of you? When tragedy hits your life, are you the kind of person that when crisis hits, when tragedy occurs, you're the one to step up and say, I'm going to do something about this? Like, I'm not just going to sit on the sidelines in my life. Or do we cower back? Do we shy away from challenges? I just want somebody to realize tonight that you are made for more. And if anything's going to happen in your lives, it's going to start by you stepping up and taking action for your own life. You're not going to find yourself in miracle territory accidentally. You're not gonna find yourself drifting casually into breakthrough and into promises received. It's going to take intentionality and rising to the occasion. You're gonna have to step up. Well, you think, well, what can I do? You know, I think one of the greatest epidemics that we face is insecurity. It is a plague like I've never seen it. And it starts at such a young age. I've got 2 boys, almost 4, will be 4 next month, and a 1.5-year-old. They're the coolest little dudes in the world. And Gio, my oldest, he's playing football right now, and we're putting him in a 4s and 5s leagues. He's 3 years old, and he's doing amazing. But just this last week, he runs over to the sideline to me, and he just got his head down, and he looks up at me, and he goes, Daddy, I'm not as fast as the other kids. 3 years old, and is already fighting the battle of comparison and insecurity. I got to get down on his level and encourage him and tell him, man, the strengths that he has and the gifts that he has, and he is fast, and okay, you're right, I am fast. And he runs right back out there and runs, and albeit the wrong direction, but he's running. But the devil doesn't wait till you're a certain age to start planting seeds of insecurity and doubt. I meet every single day people that just, you look at them and you would think, man, they've got it all together. Man, they look so great. But if you could hear their own internal dialogue, you know what I'm saying? It would be that of, man, I don't feel like I'm enough. I don't feel like I'm far enough in life. I feel like I should be further. Why am I not more accomplished by now? Why am I not graduated by now? Why am I not in my career by now? Why am I not making this much money by now? Why am I not engaged by now? Why am I not married by now? Why don't I have a home? What, you name it. Every single person is dealing and fighting this epidemic of insecurity. And we hear messages like this and say, okay, made for more, Luke, I guess I kind of hear what you're saying. But if your starting point for your life, like your foundation, if your belief for yourself is that you are inadequate and incapable, can I tell you, you are preventing the miraculous power of God working in your life. Sarah concluded in her mind that she was unfit, but God had to arrest that idea of herself in her own mind before the miracle could occur. Well, what can I do? What about me? Well, I think you have to first get a right understanding of who you really are. David tells us in Psalms 139 and verse 14, he's speaking to the Lord. He says, I praise you. Why? Because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. We need to start breaking off this insecurity and this attack on our self-esteem. Your body has over 100 million receptors. Your ears have 24,000 fibers that are vibrating while I'm preaching to you, so you can hear the sounds through those little vibrations. Your body has over 600 muscles, over 200 bones, 7 miles of nerve fiber, all synchronized to give your body agility and movement. Your heart will beat 36 million times this year and pump 600,000 gallons of blood to 60,000 miles of blood vessels and veins and arteries. If that ain't cool enough, your lungs have 600 million pockets of folds so that you can live, breathe, and stay alive. You have 5 quarts of blood, and in that 22 trillion cells. Within each cell are millions and millions of molecules. Inside each of those molecules is an atom. Those atoms oscillate. And even as I'm speaking to you right now, every second that passes, 2 million cells in your body die, and 2 million cells are reproduced. You're a walking, living, breathing miracle, even while you're sitting in that chair and I'm speaking to you. Your brain is 3 pounds of gray matter, some of you 2.5. And that brain, yes, it took you a second, it's okay. That brain has 4 million pain sensors. It has 500,000 touch detectors. It has 200,000 temperature gauges so your body doesn't get too hot or too cold. And if God would invest that much into your body that will decay and die and go back to the earth, of how much more value is your soul? Of how much more value is your spirit? I just want to combat that insecurity. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. God has invested so much into who you are. You have great value. You're not meant to just aimlessly walk through this life. You're made for more. Somebody say, I'm made for more. You're made for more, and you're made to live this life in such a way that you leave a legacy even when your days on this earth are done. There was a wealthy man in London. He took tens of millions of dollars of his own money. He put it into a trust fund for the London hospital. But he had this directive. He had this one request. Before the board of directors could get their hands on this money, this is what the request was. They had to take his remains, cremate him, put him in an urn, and for every single board meeting that took place, they had to put that urn at the end of the table and leave an empty chair for him. And that's exactly what they did. Every time the board of directors for the London hospital met, for over 100 years, the secretary recorded every single board meeting, and they would write, Jeremy Benford, present but not voting. He was there, still making an impact, over 100 years later, even in an urn. But can I just tell you, to be alive and make no difference is the worst investment of your life. While you have breath in your lungs, and to go through this life without purpose, without goals, aimlessly, is the worst investment of your life. It's the worst way to go. You don't say anything. You don't aspire for anything. You don't do anything. You don't make a mark on anything other than yourself. At some point, you have to say, I do have great purpose for my life. I want great purpose. I want great plans. I am where I need to be. God has called me, and through Jesus, I can make a difference in my world. You are someone special, and you were made for more. There was another story of a Swedish chemist. He's reading the newspaper, and what ended up happening is his brother had passed away, but the newspaper had actually made a mistake. And instead of writing an obituary column for his brother, they mistakenly wrote one for him, thinking he died. So you can imagine his surprise when he picks up the morning newspaper and he reads his own name in the obituary columns. How interesting would it be to be at your own funeral? Maybe you've thought of that before, to hear what people would say of you, what you would be remembered for. Well, this man gets to do just that. So he sits down and he begins to read what is said about his life. This is what was said. He invented dynamite, and he left a legacy of enabling the nations of the world to reach new levels of mass destruction. He will always be remembered as the merchant of death. His entire life summed up in a paragraph, dubbed the merchant of death. After reading his own obituary and what his legacy was, he said, I will not leave this legacy with my life. He took millions of dollars that he made by selling his inventions to the nations of the world so that they could blow each other up. And he ends up taking that money and he puts it into a trust fund. This man's name was Alfred Nobel, and the trust fund that he created was the Nobel Peace Prize. See, everybody thinks of the creator of the Nobel Peace Prize now as the one who creates and promotes peace, but he didn't always start out that way. No, at one point in time, he was dubbed the merchant of death. What am I saying to you today? I'm saying to you that you can turn yourself around. It doesn't matter what you've done up until this point in your life. It doesn't matter what your legacy has been. If God gets a hold of your heart and in a moment you say, God does have great plans for me. I do believe that I'm somebody special. I do believe that God can use me. Then God can turn your legacy around. You can make a lasting impact in this world and for generations to come. We need to realize that our lives were made for more than just ourselves. I don't know what you've done up until this time. You can't redo or undo what you've done. But you can say, you know, I am somebody that's special, and I can leave a legacy that can matter to my family or my future family. I can leave a legacy that will matter to my city, my nation, this world. Some point we have to live on purpose and for a purpose. Our purpose as a church, our mission statements boil down to, you see it right there in the lobby on that banner spinning, expanding heaven one person at a time. Our church's mission is to do whatever it takes to introduce more and more people to Jesus. That's our church's mission, and that should be the mission of every single God-fearing, Bible-believing Christian. Do whatever it takes to introduce people to Jesus, because eternity is real. Hell is a real place. And every day people die and spend eternity there, separated from God. Heaven is a real place, and every day people die and spend eternity in heaven when they've put their trust in Jesus. An eternity in paradise where there's no sin, where there's no disease, shame, or death, just perfect oneness in the presence of God. How long will we live our lives focused only on ourselves? How long will we live our lives without making Jesus' last commandment our greatest purpose? To go into all the nations of the world and to make disciples for Jesus Christ. How long will we let people around us, friends, co-workers, family members, die, spend their last days on this earth not knowing who Jesus is? At some point, we've got to step up and say, enough is enough. God can use me. I want my life to have purpose. I'm made for more. It's easy to think, you know, God's gonna do something in the distant places. Like I know I'm just me. I'm just broke 18-year-old. I'm just a 20-year-old. But maybe when I'm 30, God can use me. That's such a wrong line of thinking. That when I get there, then God will use me. No, because when you get there, you'll still be who you are now. Like, people say, I just can't wait to get married. No, you want to go to a wedding. Are you willing to actually put in the work to be married? Like what it takes to do that? Because when you get there, you'll still be who you are now if you don't work on who you are right now, right here, in this moment. That's not gonna change you. Having kids won't change. You know what? You're gonna be the same person that you are right now. Unless you decide right here, right now, I'm the one that God is calling to be made for more. It's not gonna change when you get there. I think about Moses. He was in the wilderness. He's running away from the call on his life. He actually just committed murder and then runs into the wilderness. So if you think about a pretty low place to be, Moses is there. Not a special place by any means, not a perfect place, not a holy place, not how we would think about it. But Moses is in the wilderness and he sees this bush that's on fire but not being consumed by the fire. And the voice of God calls out from that burning bush and speaks to Moses. And what does that voice say in Exodus 3 and verse 5? God says to Moses, do not come any closer, take off your sandals, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. Hold on, I thought Moses was in the wilderness. I thought Moses was far from God. I thought Moses was living, running from his calling. No. Moses couldn't see what God was doing, but right there in that place, God was calling holy. In that place Moses was, God was saying it's holy. And what does God do? While Moses is in that place, in verse 10, he begins to speak to Moses. He says, now I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. See, Moses, in a moment, because he was in the right place, God speaks to him and tells him that he's going to have a life with a monumental impact. It does not matter what you see around you. It might look like the wilderness. It might look like you're far from God, but in a moment, God will meet you. And if you'll take those sandals off, which is what? Anything separating you from God, in that moment, God speaks to Moses. And when God speaks to you, it's never condemnation, it's always future focused. Start speaking to him. Listen, Moses, I know you've messed up. I know you've done a lot of wrong things that led you to this point right here, but I still have great plans for you because I made you. I know you. I know your flaws. I know your shortcomings. I know all the areas. Moses, God, I can't talk because I have a stutter. He says, I'll figure that out. Don't worry about it. Because you're focused on what you can't do. But is anything too difficult for the Lord? I don't care that you're in the wilderness. My word is still good. God will meet you even in the wilderness place. His word is still good. You're in the right place. You're in the right place. Are you willing to let God speak to you in the place that you're in tonight? At the Pan American Exposition in 1901 in New York, there was a man who had been shot with 2 bullets, and they rush him into this first aid tent. They do their best. They're trying to operate on his body and remove these bullets, and as they operate, they get 1 bullet out, but they couldn't find the other bullet in his body, and they're searching frantically. They're running out of time because this man's gonna lose his blood, so eventually they have to make the difficult decision to sew him back up and leave that second bullet in his body. And they knew that it was only gonna be a matter of time before he lost his life because if infection would set in. And of course, exactly 7 days later, that's what happens. This man loses his life. And this man's name was President William McKinley, who was assassinated. Now, unknown to the doctors operating on President McKinley, unknown to the team that was right there at this exposition, that just next door in another tent at this same exact exposition was the first ever functioning x-ray machine. That if they had known that x-ray machine had been just next door at another tent, they would have been able to use that x-ray machine to find the bullet and save the president's life. They were in the right place. But they missed out on what was available to them. It's possible to be in the right environment, but not heed what God is telling you to do. It's possible to be around the things of God, to be in the right moment, to be in the right place, to be so close from the message of life and still miss out on what God has for you. We need to stop saying, if I could be there, then I could. When I get there, then I will. God has you exactly where He needs you. He put you in that family for a reason. He put you at that job for a reason. He put you in this city for a reason. And if God has called you here, He calls this place holy. And even in the wilderness, God will speak to you that you have great plans ahead of you. That there's a great purpose on your life, that you are made to make an impact with your life. You can make an impact in your family. You can make an impact in this community. You can make an impact in your generation. I've done this long enough to see all God needs is a yes from us. He don't need you to have it all together, but that's where we get it wrong, is we think we have to get it all together and then we find the God stuff. And if you're not careful, you'll miss out on what God was trying to tell you in the first place. You also have to realize that there's a time to make a difference. You have to acknowledge that you are somebody that God can use. You have to acknowledge that you're in the right place, and you also have to realize that there is a certain time. It's not when you're older, it's right now. And the choices that you make right now ripple into your future. They ripple into your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. They ripple into the generations that will follow you. I think about Israel. God tells the nation of Israel that they're going to inherit the promised land, which is representative of power, of an answered prayer, territory, safety. This was to be theirs. And God said, look, it's yours. It's right there. So they take 12 spies and they go out and they look at the land, and The report of the spies come back, and 10 of the spies look at the land and they say, hey, look, there's actually, I know God told us like we could have it, but there's a lot of enemies there. It's kind of like occupied enemy territory. I don't think we should do it. There's 2 that said, yeah, we actually can. God told us. Is anything too difficult for our God? Now the majority said, yeah. The majority looked at what they were up against and said, yeah, no, we can't do that. The crazy thing is 24 hours later, those spies actually come back and tell Moses, hey, actually, we thought about it a little bit more, and we actually do feel ready to go now. We are ready. But God said, you missed your moment. Because delayed obedience is still disobedience. And in their mind, it was just 24 hours. No. God said, no. Now nobody gets to inherit the promised land. An entire generation would have to die off. Now the 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, they got to inherit the promise. They were the only ones from that generation that got to enter into the promised land. Why? They knew nothing is too difficult for God. You cannot get so fixated on what you see, on what you can logically reason. Because if you could logically reason yourself out of this problem, you would have no need of God. Why would you need faith if you could figure out every mountain on your own? Why would you need provision if you could provide for yourself? Is anything too difficult for our God? When are we going to quit saying one day I'm going to do something? Maybe one day. We just want our lives to be pristine, like no risk. But that's not what you were made for. Growing up, my grandma had this cabinet filled with china. Anybody, a grandparent or parent had like all this china? And like, it's just plates and cups. But like you were never allowed to look at them or touch them or use them. Like, so grandma's special plates. Like don't touch the plate. I'm like, we never use those plates. Like in 20 years, never once used a cup, never used a plate, just to look at them. But years before that, there would have been somebody who made those cups and made those plates with the intention, I wonder what kind of meals are gonna be had here. I wonder what kind of memories are gonna be created around a dinner table, shared between friends or family. And no. Instead, those plates that had great intentions ended up being artifacts in a museum to be observed but never used. Man, we kind of do that with our lives. So we try to just get everything perfect and say, all right, now I don't want anything to change. I don't know if I really want God to use me because then I'm gonna feel used. Because what happens if something doesn't go the way I think it should, or my expectations aren't met? What if they leave me? What if they let me down? What if God doesn't come? Because I don't see how this could work. No. And but God's saying, you're not doing what I made you to do. You were made for more than to just survive. You were made for more than just to have a job, put some dollars in a bank account, retire at 65, get a condo in Florida to enjoy for 15 years, and then breathe your last. That's it? That's the dream? That's the goal? What's your legacy going to be? What impact will you leave? What will be said of you that ripples through the generations to follow, through your kids, your grandbabies? You were made for so much more than to just go through this life. And there are moments where God will speak to you. And I believe He's speaking to you now. That you have to seize. You have to fight against that insecurity. Sarah did. She laughed and thought it was impossible, yet in human logic. But all it took was faith. assurance, believing that if God said it, it will come to pass. I'm here to tell you tonight, you're made for more. It's a simple message. But I remember that night 14 years ago now, where I realized I was made for more. Man, I spent a lot of time angry, because it's easier to be angry than hurt. So you go through enough hurt and disappointment in life, your heart just gets so hardened towards people, you become so critical. And I was so angry. When you feel that kind of anger, that kind of hurt, it's a natural response. Try and deal with it on your own, so you medicate. You numb out. So I drank. You medicate. You try to get high, so I got high. Eventually, that just isn't enough. And it's temporary fixes. But it's Band-Aids when you're bleeding out, and I was bleeding out. Years go by, more angry, more hurt, more addicted, more lost, more depressed, more anxious, more insecure, more apathetic, no desire. I counted out that my life would amount to anything. So naturally, I just kind of found people, gravitated towards people who lived similarly as I did. Shallow friendships, surrounded by a lot of people, but alone. And I remember that night, I was dating a girl because I figured, maybe a girl could solve this. Nope. She was messed up too. I remember going to a church service like this. And I remember hearing a message on that idea that your life does have value. And maybe I had heard that before. My heart was so hard. My eyes were just veiled. So consumed with myself, with my own hurt, with my own anger. I don't know, it was a holy ground moment. I was in my wilderness place, my lowest place. And in that moment, God started speaking to me. The words from the preacher, it felt like it was just he and I in the room. It felt like there was a spotlight on me, that all my mistakes and all my struggles were just laid out. And God looked at all of it and said, in spite of all of that, you're made for more. In spite of what you've gone through and what's led to this point, I love you. In spite of what you think about yourself, I think you're fearfully and wonderfully made. I was overwhelmed. And I came forward that service and I received salvation. And it's crazy, like I was still in the wilderness, but I wasn't alone anymore. Those mountains were still there. That hurt was still there. That anger was, I still had to work with it, but I was no longer fighting a losing battle. Like where every day in my life I felt like I would take one step forward and 5 steps back. Now I started taking ground in my own life. I started to fight against that anger, fight against that addiction, fight against that hurt. And the hands of our Heavenly Father began to heal things in my life. Began to build up my confidence again. Began to give me dreams. Like, I don't have to stay addicted. I can live my life waking up, not hating who I see in the mirror. You're telling me I can live in forgiveness, forgiving the hurt. I can live not feeling bitter. You can tell me that's possible? Because in that moment, I felt like it was illogical and improbable and impossible, but I'm here to tell you the same thing God told Sarah, God told me, and God's telling you. Is anything too difficult for our God? You're made for more. You're made for more, and he loves you. And he's got great plans for you. And it doesn't matter what you've done right up until this moment, because right here, you're loved. Right here, you're in the right moment. Right here, you're in the right place. Thank you so much for joining. If you enjoyed today's message, we know that there are many more you will absolutely love. Click right here to check those out. Thank you again, and God bless you.